city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off with a Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Welcome to
Mile High Hockey Lab.
Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. I am your host, Adrian Hernandez. I am here with Evan and Jackie on behalf of Mile High Hockey to talk Colorado Avalanche. Thank you to the two of you for joining me. But you know what? First things first, we have some business to take care of. I did another ticket giveaway, and I wanted just to give fans the key phrase. We did a little differently this time. This time you needed to tune in order to get your chance at these tickets. So the key phrase today is happy birthday. That is the key phrase today. Happy birthday. So if you want to be one of the lucky winners of this week's Avalanche ticket giveaway, please send us a private message with that key phrase, happy birthday, to put yourself on the wheel, which we will spin just before we do our bold predictions. Okay, so let's start talking Colorado Avalanche hockey. It's been kind of a tough week since we last spoke. And when I say kind of, I mean really very much so. It's been a tough week since we last talked. But Evan, I'll send this one to you, my friend, Mr. Managing Editor. Like I said, you know, they've been shut out twice in a row, and that's the first time I think that's happened since 2016 or 2017. And just off the top of your head, what seems to be the issue?
Yeah, so you're right. It is 2016 was the last time they were shut out 2 games in a row, December 2016 to be exact. And, you know, it's just not the greatest thing in the world. And also, side note, I see the comment there from Sage for happy birthday, Kale. I think that's why it was happy birthday, if I had to guess.
Yes.
But to kind of get back to the actual question, there's just been a lot of like disconnect within the team. You know, they're lacking kind of what they were they're lacking what they had in their first 6 games to open the season, which was some good goaltending to rely on. Georgiev's, I think, kind of tired, I would think, to maybe start out since he's played every game in October. The kind of disconnect and changing of lines, perhaps. We saw that a lot in the last couple of games in particular, where Jared Bednar was trying out different combinations. Jonathan Drouin was on like the second line, third line, up on the first line sometimes again, you know, so it's just kind of moving parts, I think. And maybe still trying to figure out what is best for the team. And sure, I think kind of the big thing to take away from this is that we are only 8 games in. The Avs are 6-2. They are not 2-6, right?
Right.
It's not the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. So just a bump in the road, really. We'll just kind of have to see how they respond.
Yeah, I like that you're putting it as a bump in the road, because I think that's the mature take. This is the NHL. It's difficult to win, no matter who you're playing on any given night. I will say, though, obviously the Avalanche on paper look better than both of the teams they were shut out by, specifically between the between the pipes. But Jackie, I kind of felt something happening, I guess, that was confirmed by stats on Money Puck, but the Avalanche just can't seem to score when they put shots on. They're like 27th in the league in terms of shooting percentage when that shot does get on net. Do you think that they're lacking a scoring touch, or has it just been unlucky?
I'd say a little bit of both.
Okay.
When they played San Jose, I think they put up 50 shots on goal, and they only had 1 goal. So that's going to kind of tank your shooting percentage right there. And since they only played 8 games, something like that still hasn't really been averaged out. Um, and the new players, we don't really know. I kind of wish that there was some analytic model out there that compared everyone's shooting percentage versus their historical average, because like that matters. You're looking at Miko, who has a 16% career shooting percentage, versus somebody else. Like I think Duran's is pretty low, his career. So, you're not really comparing apples to apples there. Um, do I think the shutout is maybe a little bit unlucky. Like the Avs are good enough to score, and we've seen that over the last several years. But they probably weren't unlucky in the losses. They kind of deserved that, the way that they were turning the puck over and the mistakes that they made. So I think they kind of earned their losses, but maybe the shutouts were a little unlucky.
You are muted.
Anytime you face a team, sorry about that. Anytime you face a team and get shut out, there's got to be luck at least a little bit involved, no matter which side of the shutout you're on, right? So I totally agree with you, Jackie. I do, though, like you mentioned, I do have some cause for concern just with those turnovers and kind of the way the goals were set up. It was really just the Avalanche kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Obviously, the teams they play are plenty talented and can cash in on those mistakes from the Avalanche, but I just thought kind of uncharacteristically, the Avalanche were doing some things that just do not bode well for winning hockey games, let alone scoring goals. But Evan, I titled this episode "Halloween and Humble Pie" because I felt like the Avalanche came out flying out of the gates, obviously 6-0, perfect start through 6 games. But in the last two, it's just been rough, and in particular on the power play, which is 0 for their last 10 chances. Um, what solutions can you see maybe in that power play, and what isn't working currently, and why?
Well, I think I kind of take at least the last two power play things as they had with a grain of salt, just because they were missing Makar and McKinnon on them,
Mhm.
which I know we'll get into later, of
Right.
course.
Yeah.
But I think again, it's just kind of like the combination of players and styles, because we saw Ryan Johansson up there on that first unit for a little bit, and he's kept playing his usual bumper position, but he and Rantanen didn't really seem to have the best connection.
Yeah.
Drew in when McKinnon was out for the last couple of power plays. He was up on that first unit again, and without McKinnon, he hasn't really been successful on the power play, let alone at all on 5-on-5. And maybe we can get into that later today too, about how the Druin experiment is going, as some people like to say. But again, I just like to see it as like a bump in the road, I think.
Yeah.
You have one unit, special teams unit, that's doing still pretty damn good, I would say. The penalty kill, I think they're now tied for fourth best in the league, if I'm not mistaken. And you obviously have 3 shorthanded goals from Logan O'Connor
Right.
that were the stories of the season to start. Same kind of work ethic that you have on the penalty kill, now to the power play. So yeah, and like I agree with Sage pretty much right there, especially.
Yeah, Sage, thank you for your comment. Says feel like line changes might have played a role in the throwing the chemistry off, which Evan, you kind of alluded to a couple of seconds ago as well. And that's funny enough. My next question for you, Jackie: how much of this do you think can you attribute to the constant shuffling of lines, or is this one of those situations where it's like you guys are pros, you're supposed to play with whoever you're playing with? What's your opinion there?
Well, it is still early, and I guess the weird thing is I don't really like the top 2 lines. I think the bottom 2 lines have been good. The 4th line has been functional, which is great. I like Drouin on the 3rd line. Every time that he's with Wood and Colton, their analytics are great. And
Yeah.
then when they put Tatar on that line, it's terrible. So stop doing that. I don't know. I don't think they've found the right combination yet, so I can't complain about them tinkering. And they haven't been scoring at 5-on-5, except for, like I mentioned last week, Mac and Miko did, but nobody else has. So I think some change is warranted, is what I'm trying to say. But is it all part of just finding their groove and everyone finding where they belong? Yeah, and that's just going to take time regardless. But I don't think they have the right mix yet. So I think they do need to do something with the top lines. I think you need to put Mac and Miko back together, and maybe this solution is, even though, like I just said, I like that third line with Duran, Colton, and Wood. Maybe try Colton in the top 6
Yeah.
and put Tatar, Duran, and maybe Wood together. Maybe it sounds a little weird, but I think they need to get the second line going. Is really what needs to happen. Like, you can't have Johansson doing nothing at 5-5. So maybe they need a few more ideas. Even though in general, I don't like shuffling a lot. I would agree, but I just think you still have to at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that second line because we got Jason Muckley here with a comment. Thank you, Jason. Says, put Druin back on the top line. And I think he's doing that kind of like Ron Burgundy. But he wasn't finishing, but Mac and Druin had chemistry. I agree with that, but I didn't
like Duran
I
on the
didn't
top line.
Yeah. And a part of that was to Jason's credit, was having Druin on the top line was supposed to satisfy what your concern is, which is that second line. Because it was supposed to allow you to have Lehkonen and Chushkin down there with whomever you chose as your second line center, which looked like and is currently Ryan Johansson. So I feel like that's ideal. But what we've seen is that what really is the truth of the matter is you can kind of put whomever between him and Tatar and, maybe Colton, like you mentioned, depending on the matchup, which I think is the true strategy. It's not so much like you need it to be Drew Wynn or you need it to be Tatar or anyone in particular. It's just nice to have somebody on that top line, know that if they're not going to hold the top line back, and then you're allowed to have Nichushkin and Lehkonen on that second line together, which I think it really is important for the Avalanche, especially when it comes to playoff time. And I'm right there with you, Jackie. I think that what's really been found, and you can say this is statistically backed up as well, is those third and fourth line, especially when you consider the fact that the PK has been so good, which is mostly made up of third and fourth liners. So I think that so far, coincidentally, that's kind of been the identity of the Avalanche, not the high flying, super scoring Colorado Avalanche that we've seen in years past, but more or less kind of the depth team that we kind of saw a little bit of in the playoffs when the Avalanche won. I guess my concern is, let me rephrase that. I don't have as much concern because I feel like we haven't seen the whole team click yet, and they've still had success. And I think that real click moment could possibly be found this week in matchups against the Blues and the Golden Knights, which should be one, a very possibly emotional matchup, and the other, you're playing the former Stanley Cup champions and you want to see just how you match up. Randy Lee, thank you for your comment. Randy says, I just don't like the Mac and Miko split. Not sure who's best next to them yet. Yeah, I'm with you there. What do you two think about that?
I'll just finish my thought on the lines real
Okay.
quick. I agree with that. I think, especially when you're not scoring, you got to put them back together. I don't necessarily think Nichushkin and Lehkonen need to play together. I think the team's better if they're apart.
Okay.
So Bednar said this, and I agree. If you're going to play Mac and Miko together, you need to pair them with a good forechecker that's going to do puck retrievals, make space for them, etc. So I think it needs to either be Nuke or Lehkonen. I'd probably go with the Nuke at this point, which is also why I don't think Drouin is a fit on that top line. It's not a matter of just leave it alone, just leave him there, it'll work. Like, that is not his game.
Mm-mm.
He's not strong on the puck. He's not going to be that forechecker. It's just the role that they need him to play on the top line with those two just isn't going to happen. Like, I wouldn't throw him off the team or anything. Like, he deserves more time in that regard, but I don't think you need to marry yourself to making basically a reclamation project work when it's at the expense of, your top 6. So I don't think that's a matter of just being too impatient.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Druin, if you think about the line when that top line was one of the best, if not the best in the NHL. It was obviously Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen. And like when you put Drouin and Landeskog side by side stylistically, not saying that there aren't more than one way to be one of the best lines in hockey with those two, Mikko and McKinnon, but obviously that one way has worked before, and Drouin and Landeskog couldn't be more different stylistically, in my opinion. So it's like, I mean, I was, you guys saw me with the sign outside of, NHL game day that read play Drouin with Nathan McKinnon all preseason. But I'm sitting here telling you right now, like, that's not the solution. And unless Drouin absolutely just goes on a tear in the second or third line, I just don't see how it's viable. I agree with you there, Jackie. And I also agree with you that the Avs are best when Nichushkin and Lehkonen are split. And when I think of Landeskog and I think of Nichushkin, I think stylistically there's kind of a comparable. So I wonder if that's the ultimate solution and one that they just don't want to show a lot because of that. But I'm like, let's get this thing rolling. Let's get that top line, back to what it used to be in the eyes of the rest of the NHL. But thank you everyone who's joined us, and thank you to everyone who sent us a message with that key phrase for today's ticket giveaway. If you haven't, please head on over to X and follow us at Mile High Hockey, and you can follow this podcast at MHH_lab. That is where we give the cue for our ticket giveaway. This ticket giveaway is for the Avalanche versus Ducks on Wednesday, November 15th at 7 p.m. So maybe Zegras will be playing. You might get a little taste of the Avalanche getting goalied again. Who knows? The Ducks like to do that. But for the two of you, let's move on a little bit to, I guess, more controversial topic, which was the check that Cale Makar took from Kyle Okposo, which sent him uncomfortably into the boards just past the goal line. It did not look like it was going to be very good. I, for one, think he should have been suspended, but when the refs don't even call a penalty, it's kind of hard to do that. Evan, I'll start with you. Cale said, and a quote, he could have done more to avoid, end quote, the hit and how it resulted. Do you agree with that?
It's so funny. It's just Cale Makar being Cale Makar. Like,
Yeah.
he just taking accountability himself and trying to, I guess, I don't know if deflect is the right word, but deflect the blame away from Kyle Okposo. But I mean, my initial reaction when that hit, or when he went down injured, was, oh, he lost a blade, like, on his own. And mind you, this is what, at like noon on a Sunday morning. I'm tired. I'm a tired boy. I'm not a morning person. So I was still waking up. I'm not gonna lie, but it looked like, I thought he lost an edge at first, until, of course, the replays then showed it wasn't even like much of a shove, really. I mean, it was kind of just a little like oomph, I guess, from Okposo. Like, it wasn't a full on like cross check, but even then, like 6 feet from the boards, numbers facing that way. And Makar's, I think, trying to turn around the net too. Like, it's just an awkward position for him, right? So even just like the slightest of touches to throw him off, and then go really hard in those boards with that right knee, leg, where he wasn't putting any weight on it, was definitely a concern, right? But when you mention like penalty wise, suspension wise, of course, nothing came from it. And even if Makar didn't return for the third period, I really don't think they would have done anything, at least at the Department of Player Safety level anyway. As you kind of mentioned, if they don't call it in the game, then why would you do anything about it post game, right?
Sometimes they do it backwards, though. They almost feel like if they don't like it and there was no penalty, you almost can get it, like the 1 game suspension. They kind of feel like makes up for it in a way, which is kind of backwards logic, but in a way it kind of makes sense to them.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Andrew Cogliano's hit last year in the playoffs, right? I don't remember if Epperly got a penalty or not on the play.
I don't think so.
But I mean, again, Andrew Cogliano is a tough son of a gun, right? A warrior, coming back and playing in that third period again might have also influenced the decision to not, call Dops into it until, of course, he was out for Game 7. Now the question is, will Makar, be good enough to keep going, right? He obviously was fine. It seemed like in the third period at best. but who knows how many painkillers he was on,
Yeah.
took during that intermission, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be a really interesting tell, kind of in this week's games.
Yeah, and Jackie, I cannot wait to get your opinion on this. But Sage says, "What's your thoughts on how guys responded? Refs sucked, obviously, but curious on how you think guys should have responded." And Evan, you said earlier that you're not a morning person, and it seemed like Nathan McKinnon might not be a morning person either, based on how he spoke to the referees. Jackie, two-parter: one, who was supposed to fight and why didn't it happen? And two, do you think McKinnon was right to give the refs, the business, and should they just have thicker skin?
Oh boy, there's a lot to cover here. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna be a little bit on the controversial side. I don't think the hit, the check, whatever, it wasn't even really a hit, but the contact or whatever you want to call it was that bad. I don't necessarily think it was a penalty.
Okay.
It's something Makar does it a lot. He goes around the net like that, and he usually has guys on his back. To me, it's a play that happens a lot. It is definitely in a dangerous area. I agree with that. And just Makar was in such a weird position. Like, he had slowed down. If you look at the replay, he has his legs spread, and you can kind of see like he's not even on his left edge, and he might not even be on the right leg at all. He just was so off balance that I think any contact, and I believe there was some contact, like,
Oh, yeah.
there definitely was some, okay?
Yeah.
So I'm not completely saying it was 100% innocent here, but this is a play that happens a lot in my eyes. It just was, Makar was in such an awkward position, a bad result. Thankfully, he could at least skate and play
Yeah.
again, and we'll see. But I don't think it was as bad as it was kind of made out to be. So, and Evan kind of explains that. Like, when you saw it the first time, you didn't really think it was like a bad
He
hit.
thought he lost his edge. Yeah.
And
No.
so I think that kind of goes along with my point. Like, it really didn't look that bad upon first glance. So,
And you know what? And if I'm being honest with myself, I think I agree with you. Like, when you watch it, and that might shed light on why Makar said what he said. Maybe it wasn't just as simple as Makar being the humble, rosy-cheeked kid again, but it was like him having that context, knowing in the moment he was off balance and he didn't really take too much of a hit. I'll just say though, there's no way you see numbers and in that situation, it's a dangerous position to be in, especially if we can tell he looked off balance. I think maybe Kyle Okposo could probably have at least had a touch of an idea that he might also be off balance. So knowing that just the slightest little push could kind of result in a dangerous play, to me, I think that's enough. But I hear you, Jackie. I think that that's a subjective take and one that,
and I agree with you too.
Yeah.
The way that you explain that, I agree with that too. So it's unfortunate. Hopefully we end up unscathed.
the end of it. Yeah,
and we'll
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I mentioned a little bit the fight thing, and then we saw McKinnon go off for the 10-minute major. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Okay, I'll go to the McKinnon thing first. I never saw, like, to me, I thought, I'll just say, I wasn't really paying attention when he was getting called, so I don't know, like, how he did it or how long he was complaining or whatever. Like, I think if it had been Miko, he would have gotten a lot more criticism for, like, you can't take yourself off the ice and you got to keep your mouth shut and you can't get angry.
Right.
But it's kind of like it's McKinnon. He always gets like a free pass for that stuff now. and I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's already got another unsportsmanlike conduct for complaining already. So, Benner said something like he wasn't going on and on and on about it, and he's wearing the letter and he's allowed to say something to refs. But I think he's getting a reputation here. So I will say that because I wasn't really watching him, I didn't really remember this unfolding. I can't really say like who was being excessive. To give a guy a 2 and a 10, that is a lot, because it gave Buffalo a power play. It took McKinnon off the ice. Like, it kind of should be one or the other, and then to make it both does seem pretty extreme of a penalty at that point. But I do think McKinnon needs to keep his cool better, and I think you can't put your team in that situation anymore. So
Well, it's interesting that you put it that way because I was going to ask Evan, and like I said, the fighting thing, which I'm not saying somebody should have fought him immediately. I am saying though that if it goes like everyone says it's supposed to go, there should have probably been a fight, right? And that didn't happen. And then so instead, you have McKinnon doing and saying whatever he did or said to the referees, which, as you mentioned, takes him off the ice for 2 and 10. I think I'd rather have an instigating with whomever it is that you decide is going to fight, than have Nathan McKinnon on the, in the penalty box for 10 minutes when you're down 3-0. That didn't seem like a calculated reaction by any means. Evan, go ahead, Jack.
All right, okay. I was just gonna.
No,
but
go ahead.
If you want to throw it to Evan,
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's an interesting point to say. If there had been a fight, would McKinnon have at least felt, heard or whatever that the team made their point? But they just don't do this. They don't do the retaliation, which is kind of funny to me that O'Connor did the fight against Eberle, and then he was just so celebrated for it. And I'm not disagreeing with it. I get why he did it. I'm not really a retaliation person either, but I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then just to say like it was so wonderful and he cares about his teammates so much, and then to go back to like we're not a retaliation team.
Yeah, it's like,
to me that's
Yeah.
weird. Yeah, like
Agreed.
because like nobody ever got Carter back for McKinnon or for the Makar hit
to the head. Yeah.
So yeah, to me that's where I'm at. I think it's weird to not be one or the other.
Yeah. Well, and Evan, I'm totally with you, Jackie. That was kind of my point. Is like everyone told us, oh, you have guys like this on the roster in case stuff like this goes down, right? Well, stuff like that went down. And then the alternative was what we saw. And Sage Walker says Taves had mentioned he was upset with how the team, I think he means the Avalanche, responded to the incident and didn't go further into detail. But he said
I think he
agrees
just
with
means
him.
crappy play. I don't think Taves was saying like I'm disappointed that nobody went after him. I think he means I'm disappointed that we let it shake us. That we continue to play
didn't
crappy.
Respond by scoring.
Yeah, the power plays were terrible. I think that's what Taves meant. I don't think that he's like saying, nobody got in a fight or sent a message or blah blah blah.
I think that's a safe assumption, but honestly, who knows? Evan, what are your thoughts on that? How should the Avalanche have responded, or should they have at all, other than outside of maybe scoring goals?
Yeah, I mean, Sage is absolutely right, and I was going to bring that up anyway. In the first place, was that Taves did say that, and whether he did mean respond with some sort of physical confrontation or responding by scoring goals on the ice. Neither of those happened, right? So he's right either way. Taves is.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I just think though that like it didn't really wake them up. It didn't really, of course, push to anything. I think there was a little bit of like pushing and shoving after the hit. But also too, when you think about it, we kind of had this conundrum last year with Landeskog being out, because obviously you think of Landeskog as the fighter, the captain, the one who's going to stand up for his players, especially his star ones like Makar, right? Now, when Landeskog was out last year, McKinnon stepped into that, I think, a couple of times, but it had also, I think, hurt his wrist at one point, if I'm not mistaken. And, I think maybe Bednar maybe had a meeting with him behind doors saying, hey, I don't want you to be doing that, right? You are our star player.
Need those hands, guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Use those hands for, stick handling, not for beating somebody up. But on the flip side, McKinnon now has to just use his words, and his words got him a 2 and a 10. Yeah. So I would rather, if you kind of just do the simple math here, I'd rather have 2 and 5 for instigating and fighting than 2 and 10 for misconduct. But it's such a tough, line to kind of teeter on. There's not really a ton of quote unquote fighters on the team. Like McKinnon is there. Sure. He could scrap it if he really needs to. Logan O'Connor's been in a couple of times. Curtis McDermott hasn't even seen the ice since opening night. Yeah. So he hasn't had the opportunity to do that yet. So it just kind of puts the Avs in a tough spot, really, to respond. In a physical way, at least. Would I have liked for them to respond in a scoring way? Absolutely. I think that's kind of what we all were maybe
Yeah.
wishing / hoping for after that hit, because that comes, a little past midway through the second period. The Avs are down 3-0. It hasn't really been their game. That should fuel you, but it
Mhm.
didn't really do that at all.
I think they have enough players that can take care of business. Like, we don't want McKinnon to do it because of the injury risk. Like, it's good that a star player is willing to, stick up for himself and his teammates, but it's just not worth it. The guy's getting paid $12 million
Yeah.
Yeah.
not to fight.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think
but
that's
I think
too much in the job description of that $12 million salary is. We need you to fight every once in a while. I agree with you.
but they have others like Manson.
Mhm.
We haven't seen it yet, but I'm pretty sure Wood throws down, and we know Colton does it a little bit. So it's true that they don't have a ton of guys, but those are all players that I mentioned will stick up for a teammate and have done it. So even Byram, he's another guy that we really don't want doing that too often. But I think he had 3 fights last year, so
Mhm.
he's somebody. If it happens with him on the ice, like he will get involved too.
Mhm. Well, that's the funny thing. It's like I think the true answer to this is the Avs should have done nothing. And kept going with the game. As unfortunate as that is, you don't want to see a guy like Cale Makar go down in a way like that and be possibly injured. But in the scenario you explained, Evan, sure, it's instigating, but you're also still on the kill
Mhm.
and still down 3 goals. So, like, if the ultimate goal is winning the game, not to be too critical of Nathan McKinnon, but he should have just gone to the dot and played the next play, because what ended up happening is you made an already bad situation a lot worse. And especially, I mean, obviously you don't want Makar to be hurt, but if he's not hurt, it really was just a nothing play. And so to me, it was just kind of emblematic of how the road trip felt in those 2 games, which was that the Avs were kind of not quite focused on the big picture. And I think it showed in many ways. And that was one of the situations where it was very, very apparent. So, I'm typically very emotional as a fan, and I want to see that retribution. But the more we talk about it, and I guess I'm just getting older or something, but I agree. Like, I think that the Avs kind of fumbled the bag even more so in how they reacted to that situation, and just in terms of winning that game. So hopefully they can learn their lesson from that and know, the big picture is still the ultimate goal. And of course, you want to stick up for your teammates, but the best way to stick up for your teammate is to win the game,
Yeah.
in spite of what happens. So, speaking of winning the game, let's move on. Thank God from those 2 shutouts, and let's talk a little bit about
Yes.
let's talk a little bit about their matchup against the Blues on Wednesday, and we'll also talk a little bit about their matchup with the Vegas Golden Knights a little later on in the week. But Jackie, I'll send this one to you. Does this game against the Blues on Wednesday feel like a get-right game for the Avalanche, or is there no such thing in the NHL anymore?
Well, I would have said Buffalo was, and we saw how
Yeah,
that turned out.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that the games in Buffalo have always been kind of weird, but they'd been struggling, so that was kind of disappointing. That, like, okay, you can kind of suck it up after a tough one and do that against Buffalo. But the Blues I know they're not playing well, so that part helps. But the Blues have always been tough. Like, they're a
Mhm.
tough division rival. They play a style that usually lends itself to tight games, unless of course Bennington's having one of his nights, and then maybe that's what they need.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I probably do expect a low scoring game, so I think it helps that they're at home. I do think the road had worn on them by the end of
Yeah.
that. If that was another factor in why it kind of fell apart. Usually they get better after a practice, and I think they did practice in Buffalo, which was another reason it was like, come on, you need to get it
Yeah.
together. But, they're at home. I think they're going to practice tomorrow. So it should, but I wouldn't personally pick the Blues as like, yay, this is a great game to
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
to
finally. Yeah.
to put it all together. But
Yeah.
but like you said earlier, every team's they're playing NHL players that are getting paid too. It's never going to be easy.
Yeah, and that's why you mentioned Buffalo. I thought that was a get right game. That's kind of why I ended the question with, or is there such thing? Because I felt the exact same way, and I also felt like that might have been a game to not go with Gorgiev. And Jason here says, "Is it time to give Gorgiev a night off?" Gorgiev, excuse me. I don't think against the Blues at home you do. Maybe a little while down the road. Evan, what do you think of that?
I've seen that comment come up a lot, especially, it came up before the Buffalo game on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's now coming up before this Blues game. If it's time for Georgiev to get a night off, and I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes because he's played every single game in October. He's played in a lot of different games. I think back especially to like that Seattle game where he's getting peppered with shots and really has a toll taken on him for the Avs to win that game. Now, the last few games haven't really been anything like that at all. And I think part of it has just been, going on the road. He's given up now at least four goals in his last 3 games. It's just a time to kind of reset himself. But I think it's not more so because of the opponent that they play on Wednesday, but it's more so because they go into Vegas on a Saturday night. And Vegas has been stupidly good to start the year. And I'm sorry, but you can't start Ivan Prosvetov in Vegas. There's just no way that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So if Prosvetov is going to get any time, it's going to be against St. Louis on Wednesday. But they are struggling, and we said that about Buffalo, and now here we are, right?
Yeah.
So I think if Georgiev is to get a game off in this week, it would be Wednesday.
Okay.
Because then you can really like mentally prepare him, physically prepare him well for that big Vegas game coming up on Saturday night. Again, on the road, it's going to be probably one of the early contenders for like one of the best opening games to the year, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe a Western Conference Final preview for all we know. So, I just think it would work well to get Prosvetov that playing time. And to give Georgiev a night off, but who knows, right? Maybe a Noonan will get called up. Actually, I like that idea. If a Noonan gets called up, he should definitely play on Wednesday.
Yeah, there we go.
But
yeah.
I don't know how likely that would happen.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was just about to say what it feels like to me the Avalanche are really doing is having Prosvetov instead of an e-bug, because it's like, one, I feel like the competitive nature of Alexander Gorgiev shows in the fact that he played every game in October. Because I imagine there were nights like Buffalo where Bednar thought about, having possibly Prosvetov start, and I'm sure Gorgiev squashed that pretty quick. So I feel like that's kind of the biggest factor that will determine when the backup plays. But I'm with you. I think if they know for sure they're going to start their backup, I do think that they call Annunen up, which I think was the point of Prosvetov, was to keep him warm and have him keep seeing pucks in the meantime. Jackie, what are your thoughts on that? And after you give us those, tell me, do you think Binnington will Binnington on Wednesday?
Oh gosh, don't put that into the universe.
Okay, well, this kind of steals my bold prediction.
Oh,
it's okay.
no.
I'll make it, and I also have a bonus. So
okay.
I think they are setting themselves up for Annunen to play on Wednesday. And you guys mentioned most of the reasons is that Prosvetov's just sort of been keeping the seat warm, but Annunen's played 4 games since he's been sent back, or actually 5, I think. So he's ready. He's played well. The Eagles haven't won, but he's played pretty well. I think he's 1-2 with like a 195 goals against and 915 save percentage. So, and here's another reason. There's 2 other reasons. One is that Vegas is going to be a big game for them, and you're right, they're going to want Georgiev to play that one for sure, and so it would give him like almost a whole week's rest. But here's another reason: Annunen's one win last year was against the Blues.
Aha.
And Bednar likes to play his goalies against teams they've had success against.
Yep.
And so my bold prediction was I think they will call Annunen up either tomorrow or early Wednesday, and he will start that game.
Okay, well, to get back to the second part of that question, which is hilarious. This is a hilarious thought. Annunen fights Bennington. What do you think of that?
Annunen's huge. He could probably do it. Annunen's a big boy.
But yeah, that'd be
that would
crazy
require
if he's the one to
Bennington to
fight.
actually truly want to fight somebody, not just do the hold me back act. And I don't think that that's really in his character, judging by the fact that he threw a water bottle at Nazem Kadri when he was in plain sight. So anyways, I digress. I think that if Bennington does get up to his ways, it'll just mean that the Avalanche are once again putting it on him, because that's usually when we see him act up, is when the Avalanche have 4 or 5 goals on him. So I'm cool with it. If Bennington wants to freak out, he can freak out, and the Blues can lose in Denver again. That's fine with me. But I love that bold prediction, Jackie. We're getting a little early bold prediction this week, and I love it. Sorry, we spoiled your Halloween
it's okay.
surprise.
I mean, you guys
there.
are on the right wavelength here.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I like that you mentioned who he's won against previously, because you're right. Bednar does love to start his goalies against teams that they've had success against in the past. And if you think about, we started this segment with, is this a get right game? If it feels that way, maybe this is the time to go with someone other than Gorgiev, so that he can have that week's rest, like you mentioned, heading into the VGK game. But Evan, which game of the two are you most excited for as a fan?
As a fan, I think it has to be that Vegas game. However, I'm not gonna be able to watch it because I'm gonna be out of state doing something else that weekend. But regardless, while I'm gonna be busy doing things Saturday night somewhere else, I mean, I'm still definitely gonna be watching the score, keeping track of what's going on, because those are two very, very strong teams who have started the year off really strong.
Yeah.
Vegas, I believe, no, they're not undefeated still, but they won their first
in overtime.
Yeah, they won their first 7 games of the year, which is the longest undefeated streak I think a Stanley Cup champion has had to start their new season. So that's a big deal out there in Vegas, and the cup tax didn't really hit them as hard as maybe some people had thought it would. So they're running with a very similar team that they had last year. And so I'm going to be interested to see, how that goes. If Cale Makar is healthy in particular, that's only going to make that game even more competitive and even more kind of a preview of a possible, playoff matchup, down the line. So that'll be fun to watch. It'll be, I think the only thing that would really top that Vegas game would be if Binnington gets up to his antics on Wednesday night, which I think we would all hope for the better. It does not happen.
Yeah. Well, he loves playing the villain, but I'm with you. I'm excited for that VGK matchup because I think it'll tell us, it's kind of a barometer game. Not to say the teams the Avalanche have played already aren't solid teams, but anytime you play, obviously, the former Stanley Cup champion, or I guess reigning Stanley Cup champion, no pun intended, that you want to win the game and put on a good showing. Jackie, what about you? Which game are you looking forward to the most? Let's give you a little bit of a sweetener. Say Annunen does get the nod on Wednesday. Which game are you most excited for?
I'd still probably go Vegas, but I think it'll help the Avs, because usually if you have a young guy in goal, everyone knows that they have to play their best defensively. And so that also might be part of the recipe for success here, where it's like the team knows they have to do better, but I mean, they truly can't hang this poor guy out to dry. So, so I am excited for that game because I do think that they'll get back on track, but just with the matchup of Vegas looming, it's kind of a big game in just, game 10, no big deal, but it truly is like a measuring stick game. So you can't be anything but excited for that one. So I think that's still my answer as well.
Okay, that's fair, and I think we're all in agreement then that the VGK game is it's just gonna be something that we can take a little bit more from than the Blues game. But anytime you got the St. Louis Blues at Ball Arena, it's gonna be a
Be
good
nice to
time.
beat them.
Yeah,
It's always
it's
fun.
gonna be a good
Exactly.
time if you can beat them. Absolutely.
And of course, they're not the same as they once were, right? I
Correct.
mean, Nazem Kadri, I think, kind of sent them into oblivion
Yeah.
with his most recent playoff performances, of course. But yeah, it's always fun. It's also the first official division rivalry game. The
Right.
Chicago one didn't count for some reason. I don't know why. But so now
because they
you get
didn't
to
wear
see.
their uniforms,
Alternate
right?
No,
bids. Yeah.
yeah,
Not
I don't
yet.
know
That's a
why.
good point
For
because
some
it was
reason.
opening night, but
Probably.
Yes, yeah.
that's a good point
I mean, they've
though.
done it before on opening night, but I don't know.
Hmm.
I digress. So it's the first quote unquote official, division rivalry nights. That too will also, add up the spice a little bit to the game. So
Well,
it's not like we're saying don't tune in on Wednesday.
yeah, exactly.
You can tune in on Wednesday as well. I'll be able to watch that one at least this week. That's the only one. So there we go. I guess
Well,
I should just say that one for this
Yeah,
week.
exactly. Yeah, you're excited for that one because you'll be watching. But I guess I posed the question this way because I wanted to point out the fact that it kind of feels like the Blues and that whole story has lost most of its buckspot because the Blues aren't the team that they once were. And if we're looking forward to a Golden Knights game more than we're looking forward to an Avs versus Blues game, that says something to me about the current status of the St. Louis Blues. So maybe you're right. Maybe Nazem Kadri did send them into oblivion. And I think that most Blues fans will hope to be on the other side of that oblivion sooner rather than later. That said, Jackie, what do you expect in terms of outcome of these two games?
I want to call for 2 wins. I
Okay.
think it seems to happen when the schedule looks easy and we could see on paper, undefeated and they have to lose sometime, but they could definitely win these 3 games on the road. And then I think kind of the opposite now. It's like I don't think they've taken a step back, but it's just they have some things to figure out, and these can be 2 tough games, but I think they need a reason. I think it also helps, like, to have that Vegas game to look forward to. Gives them a reason to kind of get up for it and play their best game, and then if they have to play in front of Annan, and that's kind of another reason. So I'll go with 2 wins. I think they'll get back on track.
Yeah, I like that. And I like your reasoning because I'm with you. I think the Avalanche play, they're human beings. They play a little bit better when it feels like there's more to play for. Whether or not they'll say that out loud, I think the proof is in the pudding. Just look at that 2 shutout loss. It just didn't feel like the Avs had their identity in terms of that competitive edge. Evan, what do you expect from these 2 games? Are you with Jackie on the 2 wins?
No, I think there's only going to be one. Unfortunately, I think I still think that the Avs are going to still be trying to recover from this road trip, and maybe come out a little flat against St. Louis. But I do think they're going to turn it around on the road against Vegas in particular because they always love turning up in Vegas. I believe.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. If I'm thinking back to last year, I think they went into Vegas early on in the season yet again, and they beat them on the road. And that's a big deal, right? I mean, the Avs in Vegas, it's not like a big Central Division rivalry, maybe that like the Avs and Wild used to have. Certainly not to like Avs and Red Wings level way back when. But it's still definitely there. Like the feud between the Kolasar hit on Byram, the playoffs in 2021. I mean, there's definitely still some bad blood there, and the Avs love to try and get up against Vegas. The 2 most recent Stanley Cup champions going with each other, both having pretty good starts to the season. As I already said, that I think that's going to be a great game to watch on Saturday night, and hopefully on the competitive and winning side of things for Colorado's sake.
I feel like the best game I saw live last year from the Avs is when they shut out Vegas, and it was at home, but I think it was a 3-0 shutout, and I feel like that was like the best game that I saw live. So they definitely like to turn up for Vegas. They don't want to get embarrassed in
Yeah.
that game for sure.
Well, and that's the key word for me too. Like you say, they don't want to get embarrassed. Is there? I mean, they got to feel right now there's potential for that because if you get shut out by the Sabres, you can get shut out by the Vegas Golden Knights. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that might look a lot worse too. That might be like 6-0, 7-0 if you get shut out by Vegas. So I'm with you. I think that. And Evan, I like that you mentioned, past rivalries and kind of how Vegas might not match up to those, but that there definitely is kind of a grain of salt to that relationship. And I think that my expectation in these two games is just to see that very thing I spoke of earlier, which is the Avalanche's competitive identity kind of rising to the surface. Jackie, I guess my question is, what does that look like to you? Because to me, it's kind of that big picture mentality, like not taking that 10-minute misconduct, but like, what does the Avs competitive edge look like to you?
You mean when they're doing well? Like
Yeah,
what I
exactly.
want to see them
Yeah.
do? It's obviously using their speed. I'd like to see contribution from the depth. I think if they're going to win these next two games, they're going to need a goal from someone like Colton Wood. Some of the new guys, definitely a depth goal. You'd like to see the power play clicking. I just think, they're playing well. They have a great confidence. They're using their speed. They generate a ton of chances. They really have a stranglehold on the game. And that's tough to do against a team like Vegas because they're very good as well. But I just think, managing the puck well, no turnovers, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I'm saying this. Those are little things that paint a big picture and and kind of frame the mindset of the team. And I think the Avs kind of would admit they kind of got away from who they are in terms of that.
Yeah, they've been playing very sloppy. And I know
Yeah.
it's early season and the new guys and everything, but if anybody didn't watch those two losses, I mean, just the turnovers. And you could see it coming. Like they were still winning but that's why Benner was kind of really unhappy after a lot of those wins because he kind of saw it coming. And it's just like you just can't play that sloppy. You just can't be that careless. And so I think that part, like they're going to lose games, right? But to play that way, it was like they really earned those losses, and they just don't play like that.
Yeah.
So they just need to stop that right away.
That's a good way of putting it, is they earned their losses, because I think that's very true. Like this wasn't a matter of like, oh well, if the puck would have bounced just this other way. It's like, no, the Avs made sure they were going to lose those two games. There's no doubt about it. But
sorry, no 82-0, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
That's our bad.
Well, I'm done with talking about the bad. Let's talk about something cool. All right. Let's talk about giving away some Avalanche tickets. So we did have some takers in our giveaway, which if you didn't catch it, we send out our ticket giveaway alerts on our X, which you can see ticking along the bottom of the screen here, though you can go to @MileHighHockey or @MHH_lab. We asked the listeners to give us the key phrase this week, which was happy birthday, in honor of Cale Makar's 25th birthday. We had 5 takers. So
I just realized he's now no longer part of our top 25 under 25.
There, that was the last year.
That was the last year.
It's all Byram now.
I'm gonna say it's all Byram now, and who else in that prospect system?
There we go. Well,
time to find out next summer.
Exactly. Yeah, stay tuned for top 25 under 25 in like 300 days.
And can we find 25?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, can we the top 10 under 25? I guess possibly. But let's spin this wheel. We had David, Sage, Randy, Jason, and Archie send us a private message of that catchphrase, happy birthday.
And thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for contributing. I'm going to spin this bad boy. We'll see how it goes, possibly. There we go.
I didn't say, so long as it's not like the last one where it was just like super slow.
Oh, we got Randy. Randy, thank you so much for your contribution to our channel. Please keep an eye on that message you sent me. I will return it with 2 tickets to the Avalanche versus Anaheim Ducks game at Ball Arena on November 15th at 7 p.m. And I repeat, if you like free things, and in particular free hockey, please go give us a follow, like, subscribe, and share with your fellow Avalanche fans. Now let's do the funnest part of the whole show, and here's the little tune intro.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I call that bold talk.
All right, Jackie. Well, we kind of spoiled yours already. So I'll get to you after Evan, and then you can add that bonus one. We'll rehash kind of what you talked about there. But let's first go through last week's bold predictions. And I will say we were sort of close, kind of close.
Sort of close. Sort of close.
So we'll start with Ezra, who was not able to make it today, but shout out to our boy Ezra. His bold prediction was that the Avalanche will lose all 3 games. It kind of feels like they did, Ezra, but
There's reverse psychology too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, he said
Right.
after the first one, he commented and said, "Yes, it's working. They won the first game." Well, it didn't work for very long, Ezra, unfortunately. And then I believe Jackie's bold prediction was that Sam Girard would score a goal. I don't think that happened in the first game of the week, and I know for sure it didn't happen in the next 2.
Did not, but Byram scored, so I'll kind of take it.
Yes,
The Byram goal was very nice.
It was
Yeah.
very nice
And pivotal, too, at that point in the game.
Yeah, and pivotal for his confidence, I think. So I agree with you there. And then Evan, your bold prediction was that the Sabres would see points from both EJ and Tyson Jost, both the former Avs, in that matchup. You were half correct.
Halfway.
But Jost got a goal, so it's almost like
Yeah, a point. If you would have predicted Jost or EJ a goal, I feel like that would have been even more bold. So I'm with you. I think that's kind of like a ding. And then of course I don't remember mine, but we're just gonna give me a wrong. Because if I don't remember, it was wrong. Anyways,
I like how you write down everyone else's except your own.
exactly. I gotta hold you guys accountable, but I have to continue living in my world where I'm always right. You know how that goes. But let's start with you, Evan. What's your bold prediction this week?
Yeah, before I say my bold prediction, while we're on the topic of like giveaways and benchmarks, I do want to thank everybody for getting us to 10K Twitter followers, or X followers on the official Mile High Hockey account. So that's pretty awesome. I know we had some bots, I think, added onto it though, so I think we might be under 10,000 now by like 2 or something. But regardless, point is that keep an eye out on there, and maybe we'll do a little something on here too, for some sort of giveaway that we'll do for reaching that benchmark. Don't know what it is yet. We will cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, just keep an eye out for it. Now for the actual bold prediction part. I've been so close the last 2 times. I got halfway there with the Ryan Johansson goals and the Jost and EJ point. Yeah. So I need to not focus on individual games, but I'm going to focus now on the entire week.
Smart.
And I know, right? Here we go. I'm actually thinking about it now. But we talked a lot today about like how the lines consistently have changed and how, there's been a lot of different combinations and chemistry, and it's probably led to some of that lack of scoring. There has been one line, though, that has stayed pretty consistent the entire time, and that is the fourth line. Okay. And I think they've actually been pretty decent, I would say, at least. They may not be racking up, all the points anymore, but they're at least battling for the puck. They're creating chances and whatnot. And I think that's only going to pay off eventually. So I think that this week, the fourth line will register, 3 points. We'll do that between both games. Yeah.
Well, that'll help a win.
Games. I know.
And that speaks to the identity we talked about a little earlier, Jackie, which is some depth production. So the fourth line will register 3 points this week. That is managing editor Evan's bold prediction this week. Jackie, tell us yours again.
Okay, it was that Annonin's going to get called up and we'll play against the Blues, but I guess not so bold since we were kind of hedging that way. So I'm going to throw a win in there.
Okay. Ooh, I love it.
If he plays, I do want to get half credit, but for a full ding, I'll say he's got to win.
That would be cool. Well, you might get 2 full dings if he wins.
Okay.
Because I think that counts. Just like you'd get half for him playing, I give you 2 dings for him winning as well. So I like that. My bold prediction this week, and let's see if I can write it down. Actually, no, Jackie, what was you said you had like
my
a sweetener.
bonus. Yeah, I had a
Yes.
bonus. So this doesn't pertain to this week, which is why it's kind of a bonus. But I wanted to get it out there because I kind of really feel like they're setting themselves up that the Avs are going to trade Curtis McDermott at the trade
Ooh.
deadline, and maybe not literally that day, but as part of the trade deadline transactions. I think that's what they're going to
Wow.
do. They're going to need a contract spot. I think that's the reason why they're not waiving him, and I think they're going to do it. So I just wanted to get it on the record. If it happens,
Yeah.
I
What do you
put it
think of
out
that,
there.
Evan?
it would make sense. I would get it. I just wonder what the return would be for that. Like,
Probably not. Maybe
not much.
maybe a low pick, and then they just turn around and trade it. Like just something.
That's what I would
little.
think of. It's like maybe like a 5th round pick. Maybe if Chris McFarland can work his magic, he'll get some AHLer that's out there and not wanted by his team. But that's just, I don't know.
But I think they're
I
going to
do
want
like
the
the idea,
contract
though.
spot. I really think like they're at 46, which is like there's room, but I think they're going to sign Peter Holland at some point. So that's one, and I just think like it's starting to add up, and I don't know. I had sort of a premonition, so I wanted to put it out there.
I like it because I love going back and finding the clips of all of us being right. It's my favorite thing. It's the greatest feeling because I'm like, we're not just talking nonsense on this. We actually sometimes know what the heck we're talking about. And I think you're right, Jackie. What's funny is like when you think of Curtis McDermott, you don't necessarily think of trade bait. But I guess this is the beauty of that kind of false premise of the enforcer's existence in the
and
league.
that too, like I think trading him is in their view doing him less dirty. You know what I mean? They
Yep.
trade him, that means there's value. There's someone that wants you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they've done. They've traded Jost at the deadline. They've traded guys that they're kind of like done with, but kind of give them a send off.
It makes
Yeah.
sense too, because I think this at the end of the year he is a free agent, so I think it works.
And they're
out
not
well.
going to play him in the playoffs. They might as
No.
well get someone that they're going to use. So I think it's all adding up that way. We'll see.
All right. Well, I like it. I think I'll hit you guys with my bold prediction, which I think is pretty bold, but I'm not hedging on the outcome, which is important for my mental well-being. But I'll just put it this way: the Avalanche will go to overtime in both games this week, I think.
Ooh,
Oh.
I could definitely see that. Though in both games.
I think that we see Binnington play well against us because he loves reasons too. As long as it goes well, he should be fine. Obviously, but and then also Vegas, they're just a good team, and I think the Avs are 1-2, so it's bound to be a close and gritty matchup. But that is this week's bold predictions. I think we've only been right like twice so far this
Something
year.
like that.
So
I hope Jackie's long-term bold prediction works out well. And I like the idea too of Peter Holland getting signed. And I think I meant to ask about it last week, but maybe we can talk about it here in our open segment, I guess.
Yeah.
Get an update on the Eagles and their start to the season. Jackie, if you have anything on that front.
Well, let's see. And this is a good segue because I am going to put up our my Eagles 3 stars for October.
nice.
Might put that up tomorrow because I think I'm done with it and they're done playing for the month. So, but it hasn't gone well team wise. They were just on a 4-game road trip and lost every single game.
Oof.
I believe they only won 2 games, so they think they're 2-4-2. But they have had a lot of games away from home. They do play noticeably better in the home confines in Loveland, so I look for them to play a little bit better then, but they're just not scoring. And this is kind of something that plagued them for years, but they have even less offensive talent than they did in the years past, and it's so hard for them to score goals. I think Annanen's played well, but he only has 2 wins. Does have their 2 wins at least. Tufty is probably the hero. He's played 6 games and he scored 6 goals. I think in 5 of the games. So it's
Wow.
just like every night he's scoring a goal, which is kind of remarkable since he had an okay year in the AHL last year, but he wasn't even like a top scorer for Texas. So for him to show up and on a team that can't score, he's been consistently doing it is good for him. Like he's for sure going to be the first forward called up, and I think he deserves it at this point. I guess my question to you guys is, would you call him up and use him before there's an injury, meaning somebody's got to sit, or would you wait?
I am of the opinion that if this roster could stand to lose forward, it's probably Drouin. And that's unfortunate considering what I thought of him heading into the season. But if Tufty is going well, I mean, scoring a goal a game, it's kind of hard to keep him down there. You at least got to find out. And I think if this Drouin kind of, as we've dubbed it, an experiment doesn't quite pan out the same. Evan had a cat incident just now. But, yeah, maybe that's a bad omen for the Drouin experiment.
But Tufty
My
is
bad,
sort
guys.
of like the same kind of
Agreed.
reclamation project, like fresh start. He was a first round pick, and maybe he's the guy. Like I've been pretty skeptical about Tufty, but it's true. You can't argue the guy has showed up, has produced on a team that isn't scoring. The Avs are having trouble scoring now. Maybe you got to think about it.
Anthony said, Anthony Pacino, thank you for your comment. Anthony says, because Drouin didn't really pop like we hoped, Bedsy has to break that McKinnon and Mikko, Lecky and Val. I think Drouin has until Thanksgiving, or the AHL is, or AHL help is on the way. What do you think of that, Evan? Like, what's the time frame for Tufty and Drouin, as Jackie asked too?
I think at least Tufty wise, I have been noticing because I of course I follow the Eagles on social media and stuff, that he has been going at a good scoring pace, and I think that kind of brings in the question of like, why did Olofsson get a spot but Tufty didn't, in terms of like Tufty's done all the scoring but Olofsson hasn't, and of course I know different levels, different levels
role,
of employees, different roles.
I think just
exactly
Olofsson's a really good fit on that fourth line.
Yeah. And that, I think that all makes sense, right? If we're talking like before an injury happens, I don't think it's likely, just because Bednar, likes his system, likes his guys, right? There hasn't been any fluctuation in the lineup in terms of who's sitting, besides Cogliano just coming in the second game and McDermott coming out. But that was, kind of to be expected anyway. And in terms of Drouin's sake, like, Drouin's just a tough one, I think, to kind of examine right now at this point, in terms of we are still only 8 games in. I think I'd give him maybe 3-4 more games to kind of see how he does, where he can exactly fit in. But then if he's continuing to just have issues galore, then maybe we can assess more, will he be a part of this team going forward? Sorry, I was also distracted by the cat, but I don't know if we mentioned anything about him going to the AHL, which I don't think would happen.
I'm not quite there yet. I think that would be pretty extreme to send Drouin to AHL. I think they have money right now for 2 call-ups. I think they can afford. So if Ananen comes up, that's 1, but they can afford a second, I believe. And so in theory, to do this, if you wanted to give Tufty a run or a look or whatever, you don't necessarily have to get rid of somebody. You could have him up as the 13th forward. I mean, we're not counting McDermott as 13th forward.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, if it happens at Thanksgiving, maybe Curtis will be traded. So
I think, though, I take this with a grain of salt too, but we have to see kind of where Makar's at too, and then if we need to bring up Caleb Jones or Corey Schooneman again, just as backup, like he was for this road trip, just to see kind of where he's at. I know the Avs had today off, but maybe starting tomorrow and Wednesday, especially, seeing where Makar stands or how he's feeling, and then what Bednar has to say about him as well, could then also determine some at least near-term future moves, in terms of who's moving up and down.
Yeah, well, I hate to be a pessimist, but the Makar situation has me feeling like we will think he's going to play Wednesday, and then he just won't be there. And then after that game, we'll just be like, "Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. They're just sitting him until VGK because they're going to want him to be fresh for that." And then we'll find out he's not available for that either. That's usually how this story goes with the Avalanche. But fingers crossed, it's not the prototypical superstar injury story.
But they'd usually wait for an injury to call someone up. But I just think, Tufte's playing well. It doesn't have to be about that. It just, there's
tell me
nothing
this:
wrong
if
with.
Drouin can't score and Tufte can't stop scoring, it's just going to be harder and harder as longer that stays true.
And I did also want to mention Peter Holland real quick.
Okay.
Just he's played well. I think he scored 7 points in his first 4 games. And then after that, Tufte kind of took over the mantle of scoring, and he hasn't since. But he has looked good, and like I said, nobody else can score for the Eagles, so those two have pretty much done all the scoring. I just feel like, the Avs kept him around. Supposedly, they assured him that he had a realistic chance to earn a contract. So you have to say, well, he's on his way to doing that, and so I would say it's likely that I think they'll sign him maybe in the second half of the year. So far, so good for him.
Yeah.
I'd say those are really the only two to shout out. Like the rest just really isn't doing much. They have Pavel on the 4th line, which I'm really like, I know that he's on the kind of the call up short list. Like he's just never going to score, and he's not an offensive guy, but when you're on the 4th line in the AHL, you truly are not going to.
Yeah.
And so like, is this guy going to get called up with like 2 points at some point, or are we going to break the mold of like, you have to earn it in the AHL? Are they just going to kind of like just forget about that to get their boy up? So I'm a little interested about that.
Well, if you think about it numbers wise, being on the 4th line makes you the 20
exactly. They say it's role acceptance.
24
ready
forward.
for it.
Yeah, exactly. You're 23 to 24, or excuse me, 21 to 24 on the roster in the big picture. So yeah, I don't see a lot of scoring coming from that list of forwards. But I think that's a good stopping point. Jackie, thank you so much for the update on the Eagles, because I feel like that gets glossed over a lot of the times. And it's an important factor in how things settle for the Avalanche, especially when you have a situation like question marks surrounding Cale Makar and if he'll play in the next game. So we got to be on top of that stuff. And thankfully we have you, Jackie, and Evan. We also have your bright mind for reminding me to ask Jackie about the Eagles. So thank you very much.
And as far as D, I think Jones is, they still like Brad Hunt, though. You got to remember that. So
that's right.
They love Brad Hunt, and I love his smile.
And he had a couple goals the other day. Like, there was one game where they scored a lot. I think they lost 7-4. And Annunen did not play that game, by the way. And Brad Hunt scored like 2 goals. I think it's the same game. So
he's got a ripper.
Yeah. So you if the unthinkable happens, knock on wood, and they need someone to fill in for Makar, I think it might be him. But I've liked how Jones has played. He's gonna play for sure. I think everyone might expect Jones, and it could be Hunt as kind of the first guy up at this point. That'd be kind of how I'd hedge it, but either one would be fine. I mean, they're not Cale Makar, but
I was gonna say,
I think they've played fine. Like Jones definitely looks like a professional for sure. You can see the polish, and so I think it'd be fine if they needed to play him as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, I've seen Cale Makar's J Fresh player card, and he's 100% win over his replacement, no matter who it is. Anyway, so I don't think the comparison is really much fun. But speaking of fun, I've had a ton of fun with you two today, and I had a ton of fun giving away those tickets. We had Randy actually comment after we shouted him out and said, "Holy, let's go!" And then he said, "Fun fact: I've been to 5 Avs games and they've lost."
Oh no!
So wonderful. Hopefully we can break the streak and the Avs will win against the Anaheim Ducks. And as previously mentioned, I will be giving tickets away throughout the season. We will here at Mile High Hockey. And the only way to be alerted to that is by following us on X or our other social media platforms at Mile High Hockey and at MHH_lab. All of these lab episodes, which were on our 38th installment, which is pretty cool, are available on Spotify, our new Spotify catalog, the day after we do our live broadcast. So tune in, share with your fellow Avalanche fans, and we will see you soon to talk about the other side of this St. Louis Blues and Vegas Golden Knights weekend. On behalf of Jackie K, Evan, Lou, and the Mile High Hockey Lab, thank you so much for tuning in. You all have a wonderful evening. Go Avalanche.
Welcome to
Mile High Hockey Lab.
Mile High Hockey Lab.